Allô la classe, aujourd'hui on va parler un peu de l'impératif. Now your question might be, well, how does that differ from 101? Okay, so in 102 we introduce you to pronominal verbs. So if you want to say get yourself there on time, that little yourself is what makes the whole difference in 102. So these are called pronominal verbs. And then la négation, so how do you negate the imperative, especially when it comes to pronominal? All right, so when it comes to l'impératif et les verbes pronominaux, it is pretty simple if you think about of it as yourself, themselves, ourselves, etc. Okay, so if I were to say je me rase, so that is se raser, that is the se makes it pronominal, and that is basically saying I am shaving myself. So that myself is what makes it pronominal. Okay. So for instance, look at the first question. Posez-vous les bonnes questions. So ask yourself, that little vous here is ask yourself good questions. Faites-vous plaisir. Go have yourself some fun, right? If I were to say it that way. Right, so the focus is basically on the group that you're talking to or giving advice to. Another one I can tell you is ne vous inquiétez pas. Do not worry yourself. Okay, so you might, again, depending on when you're watching this video, you might have seen these questions already. De quel type de verbe s'agit-il? So what type of verbs are they? And I've already said that already. They are pronominal verbs. Okay. Another one here is documente-toi, right? Document yourself. Rends-toi sur place. Get yourself there, right? To that place. So always remember that when it comes to pronominal, especially in terms of imperative, think of the self factor. Now, where do we place le pronom réfléchi? And the self factor I was talking about, in French we call that le pronom réfléchi. So that would be your vous here, etc. Right? In true form, it will be the toi, n'est-ce pas? And I might add in vous, if I were to say ne nous inquiétons pas. Okay, so in new form, the pronom réfléchi will be your nous. Okay. One more thing I should have added is if I were to change this to the infinitive, this is what the infinitive looks like. Okay. So ask yourself questions. Se faire. S'inquiéter, right? Because we have a vowel, we take away the E, right? Se documenter. Se rendre, n'est-ce pas? And notice that when you're doing the imperative of a pronominal verb, you have a little hyphen that you need to add, okay, right after the verb. So when we're talking about how to negate an imperative containing a pronominal verb, basically think of it as you have to surround the verb, okay? So look at these two questions here. So if you have an affirmative sentence, so ask yourself question, you're not negating it. You start like any imperative, you start with your verb, followed by your hyphen, followed by your pronom réfléchi, and then the complement, so whatever is left. Now, if you want to negate a sentence, then you start with your ne, followed by your pronom réfléchi, followed by your verb, and then the pas. Remember, all of this is considered to be the verb, right? Because the verb here is s'inquiéter. Okay? So that's number one, and we'll give you more example on the next slide here. So again, think of it as you are surrounding your verb by the negation, starting with the ne and then the pas. Speaking of how does it look like when we're having affirmation et négation? Okay, so affirmation, like we've seen, we have two different scenarios here. We have tu and then vous. You start with your verb, right? Like we know already, this is tu, it's pretty simple. This is vous, right? So when it comes to négation, however, you are going to be starting with the first part of negation. Remember, it's ne followed by pas. So you start with ne followed by your verb followed by pas, and then the rest of the sentence. Okay. Again, if I had something like rends-toi, sur place. Okay, if I were to negate that, so we start with the first part of the negation, which is ne te rends pas sur place. Okay, so if I were to do that in vous, ne vous rendez pas sur place. Okay, notice that here, if it's affirmative, you have your toi, but then if it's negative, and then you're putting the toi before the verb, which is what it is, like the pronom réfléchi goes before the verb when it is negation, then you have to put it as deux. Okay, but it does not change for vous. Okay, let's try this one. Échange avec des contacts. This one, you don't have any pronom réfléchi attached to it, right? So for this one, it's take yourself to that place. This one, you're not doing any self, right? You're just saying change with your contacts. So it's pretty simple. You do n'échange pas avec des contacts. Okay, so in this particular instance, you're starting with your first part of the negation followed by your verb followed by pas. Okay, let's give you some more example. Conjuguer les verbes à l'impératif. So you'll see for the first two, I've pretty much given you something that you've seen in 101 just to give you some practice. So écoutez vos enfants. Again, vos gives it away. We're going to be using vous here. It will be, let me find my red pen. Écoutez vos enfants. Okay. De la patience. Let's use tu here for the sake of it because we could use either or. So it will be et de la patience, ayez, ayons, you name it. Okay. S'intéresser à eux. So that's a good one, right? So because we have your pronominal here, we'll have to do the little hyphen and then the rest, the good stuff. Okay. So, and let's start with tu. Intéresse-toi. Again, no S, right? Because it's imperative. I'm missing something, of course. Intéressons-nous. Right? Because this is our pronom réfléchi. Okay. Intéressez-vous à eux. Again, we have our hyphen. These are the three pronoms réfléchis that you need to remember for 102, or anything to do with imperative, I should say. Let's try to do this one with négation. Okay. Let's do it affirmation first, and then we'll change it. So if I didn't have the ne pas here, you would say, because we have the vous, let's start with the vous. Hésitez à demander conseil à vos parents. Now remember, when it comes to négation, you are surrounding the verb, right? So you're starting with the first one, an apostrophe, pas à demander conseil à vos parents. And again, for this one, you don't have the S apostrophe, so you know it's not a pronominal verb. But let's take a look at this one. Se coucher tôt. Let's do nous. Okay, so couchons nous deux. Right? Let's take ourselves to bed, if I were to put it that way, early. If I were to change this into the negative, you start with the ne, followed by your pronom réfléchi, followed by your verb, followed by the pas. Okay? Ne nous couchons pas tôt. Okay? Se rendre sur place. Let's use tu here because I mentioned it there. Okay? So, rendre, let's use that first as our verb, of course. Rend, followed by our hyphen, and remember the three main pronoun réfléchi is right there in front of you. So we put that there. Okay, I know I've already done that for the negation, but let's try to negate this, but as vous. So if you had rendez-vous sur place, right? Want to negate that. So start with the ne, followed by your pronom réfléchi. Ne vous rendez pas sur place. Okay, well, I know it's a lot of information. I know there's a lot of things to think about, where to place it, what to use, but I promise you, if you practice, you'll get the hang of it. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. We can always arrange a meeting to go over that again. All right, merci beaucoup et à la prochaine.